Not all drama is trauma. It's time to get over yourself. Fear God, don't covet. That's the message I have for you today. That is what is percolating. That is what is in my mind. That is what God has asked me to come on to do today. And I'm going to do it with as much intensity and passion as I can. So if you want to ride with me, cool. If not, keep it pushing. Because what I really have to discuss is what I started with, which is not all drama is trauma. And it's really paramount for part of my discussion. And who am I to be talking about this? You probably don't know me, never seen me. What are my credentials, my criteria, etc. I'll say this. I'm just a human just like you. And I'm a middle-class human as far as where I'm at in the grind of life. And so I understand, and I've come from a poor background. But forget the story, because I don't want to use drama as trauma for a way to validate why I believe I should be delivering a message and why you should possibly be listening. To think that people are talking about, and I've done a lot of research, I read a lot, I watch a lot, specifically on the mindset of people and society as a whole, like who we're becoming. And I said this in one of my recent videos based on a book I read, that the difficulty coming for humanity is around the fact that we are so docile. In other words, we can't get over ourselves. In other words, you take your drama, the drama of life, because life is one big drama show, and somehow everything you have to go through in life is traumatic. That when you experience pain, and I talk about, we're going to go into covet soon, that you could experience pain and be having a conversation with someone around pain and say, you know, oh man, I went through this struggle. It was painful. And then you'll reply with something you believe is even more painful. And that person will reply with something they believe is even more painful. Like, we're trying to outdo ourselves on who has it more painful, as if pain isn't pain. The way as if loss wasn't loss and struggle wasn't struggle. There's like, unless you've gone through something very traumatic, and we know what trauma is. We know what deep, deep loss is and real deep pain. And maybe that's somewhat of a contradiction. If pain is pain and loss is loss and loss is loss, then trauma is trauma. But we know when we've seen something that it's like, man, that is a significant traumatic experience. And unless you've gone through what one of those definitions are, and you're just waking up, working a 9-to-5, raising a family, and taking care of yourself, that's not trauma. That's just the drama of life. That is how you're built, how you're wired, and how you're supposed to proceed, because we all have a culture. It's society. It's life. It's life. So not all drama is trauma. You really have to start getting over yourself. Stop comparing the pain. Stop comparing the loss. Stop focusing on the difficulties that come with life, because it's never going to stop. And I think part of what puts us in this mode, I'm less around what social media and technology does to us as I'm learning, as far as the influences. And I'm going to get to covet in a minute. But what I find that society does to us today, the influence today, is that we are in a highly individualized life. In other words, you turn your notifications on or off. You set your preferences for all of your apps. And that somehow you feel like because the instancy of gratification is delivered to you at your leisure, you turn it on and off. You get packages delivered overnight, food delivered to your front door, on demand, everything you want to watch and see. That somehow now life is supposed to be highly individualized to just you, as if you're the only one living in life and you're the only one that deserves personal preferences. And again, you're the only one that is going through the balance of, I need to get to the other side, but somehow you want to avoid walking the path. It's not logical. It doesn't make sense. Not all drama is trauma. It's time for you to get over yourself. I digress. Before I get into fearing God, I'm going to read a passage that I read last night in the Bible that I've read now 3 or 4 times because it really struck me. And it probably has a lot to do with the fact, too, that yesterday was an earthquake on the East Coast, and earthquakes are not supposed to happen on the East Coast. But I'm not going to get into conspiracy theory. I really want to define covet, or at least what part of the definition of covet reads. And listen to these words. To desire wrongfully, inordinately, or without due regard to the rights of others. I'm going to read those last few words. Please let it sit and marinate. Please consider what this means. Without due regard to the rights of others. Everybody has rights. Everybody who is given life deserves the same power of possibility. That is the most fundamental and plain, real human truth we should all agree with. And we do, because by default, our mechanism is compassion, right? And when we see real trauma, and when we see real loss, and when we see the birth of life, children usually bring out our most compassionate of default mechanisms, death, marriages, big things like that. You'll get to the true feeling of what it's supposed to be as a human, right? And that is to have regard for the rights of others. So going back to drama is trauma, or not all trauma is drama, to think that this is some highly individualized life just to you is to lose regard for the right of others. And everybody deserves, and everybody should get theirs, but everybody too deserves their own struggle, their own passage and path, and their own level of faith. Don't lose regard to the right of others. And so now I want to talk about self-comparison being key. Self-comparison being key. So if we could possibly, and if you're following along and I'm making sense, the idea and possibility that we could even covet pain and stress and loss from others in a way to what we possibly think is trying to be relatable, right? Because I think some of what we do from a society and a social acceptance perspective is maybe we feel like if we share pain, then we're more relatable and we can be more accepted, and somehow that makes us more trustworthy. Because look, oh my God, it's so expensive to buy groceries. It's so hard to raise kids. It's so hard to put in 40 hours a week, and on and on and on. But that's just life. Self-comparison. What I've really learned on my journey, and I'm going to get into this soon about fearing God, and I'll save what I'm going to get to in a minute. If we can agree that life is intended to be a journey, and one that is in some capacity individualized to you, if you're going to take it as a turn notifications on and off and set your preferences, then the only comparison you should be looking for is to yourself. That's it. Anything outside of you could be misconstrued or defined as coveting in all facets, whether it's lust or comparing what you may have or not have based on what you think you should have or others. Self-comparison, you lose that sight. And when you can't compare yourself to you, then how do you grow logically? Think about it. If you're not worried about where you are today based on what you've already done, and that where you want to go requires you to continue to elevate in incremental steps, right? Ladders are ladders for a reason. A path is a path. A journey is a journey by all definition for a reason. And you lost sight of who you are because of who you could be, then you're coveting, you're in trauma drama, and you've lost comparison to self. And there's no way forward. I don't know how else to say it logically. If you're not trying to be better than who you were yesterday, moment to moment, like even I've come to the conclusion that even as I'm talking here, I'm trying to self-reflect. I don't even know if where I'm going makes sense, but I know this, that my intent is to be so into the moment, and this goes into mindfulness, meditation, I believe faith in God and Creator, that even as I'm talking, I'm figuring out, how do I be better than my last second? I'm that micro in my world, that the macro is self-domination, self-actualization, nirvana, the ultimate relationship with God and faith and discipline, that I can be judgmental to myself positively that I need to get better second by second. And I'm going to argue if you don't have that mindset, you're in the wrong space and time, and you'll never get to where you want to be. Let me go back to due regard to the rights of others, coveting, and trauma drama. I want to end it with this passage from the Bible, and I need to I have a prompter in front of me, and I'm going to click play because I wrote this thing down. All right. It starts with this. There is an impending judgment on earth. Behold, the Lord makes the earth empty and makes it waste, distorts its surface and scatters abroad its inhabitants, and it shall be, as with the people, so the priest, as with the servant, so his master, as with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the creditor, so with the debtor. The land shall be entirely emptied and utterly plundered, for the Lord has spoken his word. I got to pause it real quick because there's something else I want to get to. That gave me chills. If that doesn't tell you all you need to know about what you might need to do to reshift your mindset for life, like as within, so without, the self-comparison, ultimately when it comes down to it, no matter how many notifications, preferences, material objects that you procure in your life, if you have faith and believe, and if you look at any kind of evolution or science or done any kind of literature or read any kind of literature and research, then you know the world is cyclical, right? The idea that pyramids could have been built eons ago and we can't replicate it today with this current technology, if that doesn't give you power and insight to, man, how do we get to where we are today? If you can't see some of the science and the anatomy of how your brain works and how we've had certain components of our brains that have been developed for over millions and millions of years, and one portion of our brain that has to deal with emotions, a third layer to the brain, which also deals with consciousness and subconsciousness, which is all of how you function, the simple things that you overlook, like your heart beating, your lungs working, your organs working, cells being changed by the millions, almost just by, like, as we are speaking, as you're listening. The evolution of your creativity, of consciousness, of your power of possibility, that some parts are as old as millions and millions and millions, and some are only hundreds of thousands. They talk about the limbic brain, all these things where in the midbrain, and I'm just learning this, so I'm not a neuroscientist, but I'm trying to explain. There's portions of your brain that are built inside of you that have evolved through the power of creativity and possibility that are hundreds of thousands of years old versus millions of years old. And there's evidence to support that there's things that have happened that are miracles outside of what we see today that should give you the power to realize there's something bigger than you, man. And no matter what you accrue, or no matter what you do, or no matter what you get, none of it goes with you. And when it comes down to it, we're all just flesh. And we all just rot and turn to dust anyway. And so what I really want to drive, as I've went off on a semi-tangent, is what I'm learning about my life. And take it for what it's worth. It's just my life. It's only me. I'm one person. I'm not asking you to be me. I'm not asking you to click like, follow, or share. I'm just doing what I believe I need to do because that's what I feel like life is about. This is just me. Some get to talk directly to God. Others only hear from God. So be careful what you are asking of God. Not asking you to believe, not asking you to open the Bible, not asking you to get on your knees and pray. I don't want to even say I don't care what you do. But the reality is this. You're going to do what you're going to do anyway. But if you took the time to do some research and you got in deep into the power of possibility, the power of faith, right? If culturally, especially in America, in the West, a lot of our principles and foundational elements are built off the word of God. I'm not asking you again to believe. What I'm saying, though, is if you know the world functions in that way, The president of the world, of the United States, right? He thanks God directly. And we just, yes, praise be to God. And we go to church. We do all these things almost arbitrarily and obligatorily. But have you really done the research? Because then you'll realize that God has some direct orders. One of them is covetousness, right? Or coveting. And the other is to fear God. Forget all the other commandments and the non-negotiables. If you just fear God and you don't covet, and you understand that God makes decisions based on what he sees occurring in the world as people, not as one person, as the collective people. And that in that process, in that evolution, everyone gets to hear from God, but only some get to talk directly to God. What is the difference? It comes down to this, and what I want to hope resonates with you. I want us all, in however you define it, because you should do it on your own, to be able to talk directly to God. But then it comes down to this. What are you asking of God? Because if you go back to the start of this talk and you're bringing trauma drama consistently to God, not saying that you shouldn't. You should, if you're going through trauma and drama, go seek God. Go have a conversation with God. What I'm saying is this. I've come to the realization that I'm talking to God, as, like I said, as I reflect in the moment and as I'm trying to self-analyze, self-assess, get better. My conversations with God started with humbling myself all the way to say, to constantly ask, God, I need your help. God, I need your help. God, I need your help. And somewhat in a drama fashion. And if that's the relationship you want, cool. But I asked myself this: if I'm constantly bringing drama to God and all he's hearing from me is drama and drama and drama and pain and suffering and loss, as if somehow the world didn't evolve to where it is today without people having to endure pain and suffering and loss, what type of relationship could I possibly expect, or what could I expect in return from God? Logic. So I have the mindset now of I want to get to talk directly to God. If God is there and God is available to us and we get to meet Maker at some point, I don't want to hear from a cherubim. I think that's how you say it. I don't want to hear from an angel or a prophet. I want to talk directly to God. I want to hear from him. And I'm good with, you did all these, you knew you shouldn't have done all these things. I'm comfortable accepting that now. I'm good with him judging me. I'm good with him telling me I was dead wrong. I'm good with him telling me if you didn't wait this long, it could have been this. But I've decided that while I'm here and have the power of possibility, I'm going to miss you with my drama. I know that it's required. I know that it's needed for me to grow and evolve. I'm only coming to you to check in. Now I'm saying I do this regularly, but I want to talk to you about, I made these sacrifices. Am I good? I want to have the conversation of be my rock, right? Be my light. Be my anchor. I'm going to sacrifice everything I have for the protection of my possibility. Am I doing it right? Send me a message. Send me divine wisdom. I want divine wisdom. I want divine energy. I want divine possibilities. I want to maximize this thing I have called life. So I'll do everything that's required that I can see and think of. I won't ask you for any help getting through my marriage as far as I got to be married. It's a relationship. I got to take the good with the bad, the right with the wrong, and the indifferent with the indifferent. I'll work through that because you've already given me that ability. I'll work through fatherhood. I'll work through my 40 hours of work. I'll work through the bills going up and inflation and the economy crashing and going and depression. I'll work through all that. I want to come to you with, as I'm making these sacrifices, as I'm ensuring I'm not coveting, as I prioritize fear of God, fear of not achieving what you have instilled in me, and not raising my hand and saying, the help I need is divine wisdom, energy, and power from you at all times. Everything else, miss me with it. Here's what I forgot to mention that I think that eluded me. And this is where I've come to the conclusion with God. if you're comparing, like, I'm in so much pain, but it's not really trauma, then you're taking away the resources from somebody who really needs that level of support from God, from country, from universe, from professionals. I say it like this: I work in the healthcare business. They'll tell you if you feel sick, don't go to the emergency room, because emergencies are for emergencies, like a gunshot wound. Sorry, that's just where I come from. You know, when COVID was rampant, like, you think real trauma, emergency trauma is for people who are going through emergency situations. So if you out there fronting like it's really hard, but it's not that really an emergency, you're pulling unnecessary resources from God, from universe, and from somebody else who really, really needs it. Why? Because you should have respect for everyone, respect for others, and never covet. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Stay rich.